Welcome back to another clay video. Today, we are going to create these 3 different enemies from the Pikmin series. Also, this video is a collaboration with Cynical Scorpio, so make sure you check out his video of creating the creeping chrysanthemum from Pikmin. You can find a link to this in the description of this video. When we first started planning this collaboration, I was super excited because I really like the Pikmin games. They've always been one of my favorite video game series. I love all of the different wacky, cool creatures in this game, but this also made it a little bit difficult to decide what to create because there's just so many different choices. But I went with some of the more common enemies, maybe not as common as the Bulbor, but if you've played the Pikmin games, you probably know most of these enemies. This first one we're going to create is called the Wollywog. The names of these Pikmin characters are just so wacky. What this frog does is jumps in the air, floats for a second, and then slams down on your Pikmin, and if there's any Pikmin left underneath him, they will get smashed and die. So, at the beginning of the game when you first encounter this guy, he could be pretty tricky, but once you have a lot of Pikmin, they can just weigh him down and he can't even jump in the air anymore. So with a big army, he's really not much of a threat. Let's jump into the actual clay creation here. We have this mixture of orange and red. This is going to be for the feet. First we have these pads. Now we'll take these 3 balls of clay. These will be for his fingers here. Before we get too far into the video, I want to let you guys know there is a poll in this video. You can find a link to the poll in the description of this video, and you can help decide what will be created next. This poll will contain some things from the new Mario game, the 3D All-Stars game. We need to take some green clay here. This is going to be for the top of the head. And we can just pat that down with our fingers. Now let's take this modeling tool. We sort of need just a faded pattern, kind of random in a way. And now our frog needs to be removed from the table so we can turn him. On the side of him, he has these weird markings. I'm just gonna take a guess and say these are somehow how he breathes, maybe some type of gill. Now, after we have this first green layer, we need to make a second layer inside that's much darker. So we'll use our dotting tool here, and we can fill it in with this dark green clay here. I just took the green that I used for these circles and mixed some black with it. Now let's get our frog onto the baking tray, and our first enemy is complete. Moving on to our second enemy, we have the Pyroclasmic Slooch. I don't know where they come up with these names, honestly. This enemy is only in Pikmin 3, and he's some sort of fiery slug, is kind of the idea I get from looking at him. Honestly, he's super easy to defeat in the game, as long as you have red Pikmin. Because he's a fire enemy, he leaves this trail of fire behind him. Any other Pikmin that you throw at him will be set into flames. So you gotta make sure you use the red Pikmin, but if you do, he is so easy. He basically poses no threat. But I think that he just looks really cool, so I wanted to create him. This part here is going to be his antennas. We will attach some eyeballs onto that later. Now we can take some orange and yellow clay. I've only lightly mixed this together so we have this nice swirling pattern. I was hoping that that would look sort of like lava or fire, and I think that it adds a nice little effect to it. Let's take this worm of clay and start wrapping it around him. I've sort of done it in a random swirly pattern, not really straight lines. I think this adds to the more liquidy kind of feel that this character has. Now I'm patting it down with my finger because I want it to be very flush, very flat with the body. I think this looks a lot nicer than having it raised up. And basically we'll just keep working our way up into the middle here until we get to the very top. I'm not really sure how many people are into Pikmin, but if you are into Pikmin and you want to see some more Pikmin creations, let me know in the comments what you would like to see, and I'll see if I can make some more Pikmin videos. In the front here, I actually never noticed this in the game until I looked at some pictures to create it. He actually has a mouth in the front here. I believe he has some sort of attack that he can shoot out his tongue, but I don't think I've ever even seen it because you defeat him so fast. This will be what I like to call his mustache, but I think that it sort of looks like what a catfish has. And we have these flaming strips around them as well, sort of just blends in with the body nicely. We can attach that onto our slug here. Now we have these eyeballs I was talking about earlier, at least I think these are eyeballs. Now we want to make it a little bit more flowing, so we'll lift up some certain parts of it. This looks pretty nice. So let's move on to our third enemy. This one is called the Armored Cannon Beetle. That one actually makes sense, unlike the other ones. This one, however, you can only find in the first Pikmin game. Let's take some foil, this will be for the inner filling. The main reason for doing this is I didn't mix enough of this black clay, and I guess let's be honest, I don't think that brown and purple even changed the shade of this black clay. So basically we're just working with some black. But adding in that foil I guess is pretty nice because it saves some extra clay that I could use for a different project. This enemy attacks by breathing in air through his hole and shooting out a giant rock through the other hole. And the idea of how you beat this guy is to plug up his hole, so you have to throw a bunch of Pikmin at him and he'll suck them up. And by doing this, he will lift up his shell and then you can attack him underneath his shell. So he's really not too hard. Again, if you have a lot of Pikmin to fight him with, nothing in this game is really too difficult to defeat. But with a small amount of Pikmin, he can be pretty tricky. This is going to be his head here. And I know at this point, this guy is not really looking like really anything. He's just sort of looking like a blob of clay. But I promise you, once we get the legs on him, he will start to look more like an actual creature. This is going to be where he shoots the rocks out of. And now we will start creating the legs. We have these 4 identical legs. We need to cut them at this slant. This just makes them a lot easier to attach to the body. They don't look so lumpy, they sort of blend into the body nicely. Underneath his body and his legs, he has this tan pad, so we can get those ready here. And now let's get this tan pad also under his body. We can work on his eyes here. It's just this mixture of green and blue that I made. Now let's get his legs onto his body. I was a little worried he was going to sink down onto the tray when baking, but surprisingly he stood up pretty well. And now our Pikmin creatures are ready to get baked. After baking, there's nothing more we have to do to these creatures. So, here it is guys, the Armored Cannon Beetle, the Wollywog, and the Pyroclasmic Slooch from Pikmin. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to participate in the poll to help decide what will be created next. And if you enjoyed this creation, you might like this other Pikmin creation I made a while ago on the channel. You can find a link to it up here. And I will see you all in the next one.